cobalt blue, and I'm going to work that cobalt blue into all these sky areas again. On this side of this tree, I'm going to try to be careful and work around. And I'm going to bring that color, actually, you might be surprised, but I'm going to bring it right into this tree because I know all of this is going to be a darker value on this tree. As I normally do, I'm painting my sky color right down into the mountain area. Now I can get some of that blue color on the back side of this tree because I know this is the shady area and this is going to be a darker value. And I want to get it in, and I do want to paint around my figures. Again, we've got two figures here, and I'm just working carefully, and I'm not being real precise about it. I'm just working a little bit carefully around them. So I leave white space. Eventually they're going to get some color on them, but I'm making these little touches just to make sure it's going to work the way I wanted. There we go. Again, I don't get too caught up in these kind of what I consider to be kind of small problems, particularly early in the painting, because there's opportunities later to fix them if I need to, and all of this is really going to dry, even that color, this deep sort of dark violet blue is going to be lighter, much lighter actually when it dries. And you can see this area is drier, so the top edge is not feathering quite the same way. And then to fix that, it's not really what I wanted. It's the background wash for the sky was a little bit wetter than maybe, not that it shouldn't have been wet, but it was maybe too wet to put that on. All I'm going to do is I've got my 1/4 inch flat out. I blotted it on the rag next to my easel. If I just use the edge of it to slightly soften that, it'll turn that feathery edge into a more firm edge, which is really what I want. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here just to make them look the same. Be consistent about that. And that works out. So there's a little technique you probably didn't know that you can do, again, when you're working that dry and wet and it didn't come out quite the way you wanted, you can go back in there and sort of lightly feather it out. I do like the way this branch is hanging over, but I want some of this dark color under it. That's good. For now, just to get a little bit of different color and value, some soft changes that make it look like there's something going on back there. Nothing distinct, and it's whatever it is, it's kind of way out of focus for us. We don't exactly see what it is. Again, I'm going to get up under a little bit under that tree. Dig in a little bit here, get these edges to look nice. So I'm going to leave it at that. That little, just a little bit of a suggestion that something is going on back there, a little bit of a statement that something's going on, really works out just fine. So that's what I'm going to do for now. This probably needs to get dry before I go on, so I'm going to do that, and then we'll jump back into the painting in just a moment. So this is how I'm going to jump in. I've got this big puddle here. I've got my ultramarine blue, and it's got burnt scarlet as well as burnt sienna in it. And I'm going to just work my way down, and I'm going to start to sort of show the edges of where there are branches. Now I'm putting violet color in where branches are going to be sticking out, but I want to be sure that I've got it all over the areas that are also snow covered. I'm making kind of these, in certain areas, these little rounded shapes which really look like the way heavy snow sits on the boughs of these kinds of fir trees or pine trees. Deep shadow that's working its way across the ground here. Notice I'm working these quick strokes, so I'm getting some dry brush work in there, and it's leaving a little bit of highlight, leaving some areas that, like there are maybe there's a little bit of light coming through the trees, and then lighting up those areas of that snow where that shadow is coming around. I'm going to get some of it down in here, and actually over in here where there's light hitting parts of the snow, parts of the tree with the snow on it, and other areas where it's in shade or shadow. I'm going to actually pick up some of my cobalt blue and mingle that in here as well. Start to show that those are the fir or pine trees that we're looking at in this forest. And again, I'm working with the blues and the blue grays right now simply because that's the color that would be on the snow, on the branches of those trees. And then I can get, hopefully, some dry brush back in here. There we go. And that dry brush just gives us a kind of little bit of an indication that there are some tree branches back there, some rough tree branches. Really ultramarine blue and quinacridone burnt scarlet. A little bit maybe here. Just to blend it in, I get clear water on my brush. I blot the brush up to get a good bit of it out of there, and then I just sort of drag it out, soften up the edge, soften the transition, because I want the color to be different, and I want there to be some indication that there's cool shadows on the shady side of this tree as well. But I want it to stay really lighter than that background area of trees right here. So it's going to be a tough task, but let's see what we can do. Around the figures at the moment. And I think I want it a little bit bluer than that, so all I'm doing is nice and wet. All I'm doing is dropping some ultramarine blue in there. And let's start down here at the bottom. Actually, I've got my medium round, and you can do this with the round, and I usually do, but you can also do it with the flat. Let me start here with the round. And with the flat, I can really get these sort of pointy edges that we would see from the boughs of the fir tree. So let me get some of this, and then we're going to do something else. I want to really soften up the edges of this in certain places. So let me get this in. We'll soften some edges just on this row right here. And then where it's sticking out from under the snow, not the entire edge, but you can see that kind of a rough edge along there. I'm going to soften some of it. That soft edge will help us see that essentially the branch and the snow are kind of one thing. And then with the drier brush, you can see I'm getting some dry marks that actually really look like the edges of the branches of a fir tree. I'm going to get some sticking out right along here. I want to cover up some of that purple right there. And we're going to do the same thing. Now this is kind of dry brush work at this point. And we're going to try to work in layers. The branches of fir trees and pine trees tend to be layered. They tend to have the branches go up, and they all tend to come out of the trunk at the same spot all the way around the tree. So that it tends to be layered. Notice that I'm letting different colors sort of show. Some of the blue is showing here rather than the green. So I do let those colors change a little bit. Again, I was talking about it a little bit earlier, that those changes in color and value look so natural to our eye. A little bit more of the green in, and finish up these branches down here at the bottom. And again, I'm using the flat now. I tend to paint with my rounds all the time, but flats really are good for this. Boy, why are you doing that? That doesn't seem right, but it's going to work really well. It's going to create a nice dark for us, make it look like we're really in certain areas way back under those boughs where it's very dark. No light is getting in there. It's very dark. This time I'm going to start actually up here at the top. And again, it looks like I've showed some snow there, so I'm going to show where the branches come out there. Looks like I've got some snow hanging over here, so this is where that branch would be sticking out from underneath, and down here as well. Not going to be as dark, and they're going to be warmer because they've got sunlight on them, and they're going to look a little yellower because they've got sunlight on them. So that's what I'm going to do down here, bring that color in. I can always darken it if I have to, and I might adjust it, and then as I work my way back into the shade area, I'm going to go back to that darker blue mixture. The areas where we know there's sun hitting. Right up in here, looks like there's some branches there. when I'm trying to get some real dry brush marks, I tend to hold the brush like this by the side. It works a little bit better because I'm not really using the point, I'm using the side, and I get more of that dry brush work. Ultramarine blue and burnt scarlet mixture to mix it in down in here where I feel like things would be really, really dark under that tree. And then I get some of these branches sort of hanging out off of this contour that represents the edge of the tree over here. I don't want it to be quite as dark, and I certainly want it here. I want it warmer. I want to show that the sunlight's really hitting it over here. So there's more deep gold in the branches on this side of the tree. And then I'll go back and get my ultramarine blue, and again fairly wet, so that I get into the shady side of the tree. Now notice I'm not making the greens on this tree nearly as dark as the greens on these two. And that's because it's in the distance. We wouldn't see it that way. And by our value sketch, this is supposed to be a lighter area. It's actually supposed to be almost white. So even the dark marks that I'm putting in there need to be lighter just to read kind of the way we planned it with our value sketch. Goldy color here to put over in these branches on the right hand side. And in fact, I want to bring a branch out and touch and overlap. There's a bit of snow that's sitting on a branch of this tree and overhanging, and I want this to come out and really be overlapped by that, by this pile of snow that's sitting on the branch here. Those overlaps are important for seeing space, so I'm going to bring them out so we can see the space. And this I'm really going to do with dry brush. You can see that the bristles of this they're dry and they're splayed out, so I get those little edges there, and those are going to help me do this work back in the background without being too fussy. Now again, this work is really easy to overdo, so don't overdo it. I'm going to get some of the darker color and start getting it in, and actually especially down along the bottom edge where those trees meet the ground. Again, I'm repeating that convention that I established over here. I have my burnt scarlet. I'm going to put the burnt scarlet on this figure here to the left. This figure, this person's a little bit shorter than the other. I'm going to get that on that person. Try to leave a crescent of light right there where that person's shoulder and part of their back is catching some sun. I'm mingling now some darker blue in there to show the legs a little bit, and maybe some over here. I'm going to put it on this person, actually a little bit on the face of that person, and this person. Those colors are a nice contrast to everything else that we've got in the painting, so they help us see the figures, help us look there at those figures. And then actually, for a real nice touch, I'm going to get some cadmium red, and I'm going to use it for this one's hat. Just a touch of it. Kind of rough. Cast some shadows from them. A mark here, a couple of marks where we can see tracks in the snow. Now I'm not trying to make them exactly like footprints. I'm just trying to make kind of a trail of these marks, which we'll see and recognize. Maybe right in here in this white area, this would be a good spot. I'll add some blue in there as well, in the shadier parts of it. Try to give it a little bit of depth, like we can see down in kind of that impression in the snow that was left by the boot. And again, I'm not overdoing this. I just want to give an impression of what has happened here. That these folks have come walking into the woods from the left, and we're seeing the trail that they've left behind with their boots on their hike. Maybe I'll get one right in here. Round it off right at that edge so we can see that it's a boot mark. Maybe another one here. There's two folks after all. And then with my, for this one, it's a little distinct. And again, I can make things indistinct and join them by softening edges, which is what I'm going to do right here. It's also picking up some of the color. So I've left a little bit of a trail, and it's very, very, very light. It's just an impression. Again, now let me go back. I feel like I need something in here. There maybe, and then here. Great, and I think that'll do it.